What up, Freediver fans? My name is Ryan Myers. I'm here at Florida Freedivers with Jonathan and Eric. We're here working on YouTube today. We're going to talk about reels, float lines, when to use, how to use them, everything you need to know.
All right. Yep. That's it.
Yeah, I think you got it. We'll see ya.
All right. So we've got Ryan Myers here with us today, and like we said, we're going to talk about some reels. But kind of, why do people know who you are? What's your background? What are you doing?
I spearfish a lot.
Spearfish a lot. All right. Sounds good.
Been traveling the last 5-6 years, competing a lot.
Okay.
Been on Team USA for like the last 4 years.
Awesome.
And just dive hard.
Brought home
a national championship.
national championship trophy.
Back
right?
here to Florida, yeah, which is pretty cool.
Everyone asks about that thing that comes in the shop.
Because
Do
it's
they?
massive. Because it's massive. Yeah, absolutely.
It is obnoxiously huge.
And it's something that's it's been around, a little bit of history on the Hook Trophy.
It's like 60 years old. It's been all over the country. I don't know when the last time was. It was actually in Florida, but it's been a long time. So it's really cool.
Like
it's really
over
cool.
a decade.
Yeah, it's a really cool piece of history. It's definitely an honor to be on it with some of the other names on it. Terry
Legends,
Moss, and,
literally, yeah.
Terry Lentz, some of the real original legends of our sport. So.
Nice. That's awesome. So super excited to have Ryan. Ryan's one of our sponsored divers. So he's been with us for about 6 years or so. Since before he was famous.
That's right.
So he's making sure that he stays true to his roots. And so I wanted to kind of dive into the idea of when to use a reel on your spear gun or a belt reel for your full spear, or if it's a good idea at all.
Got it.
All right. So
Guess
what
I'll
do you
start?
think? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'd say your main difference between your float line and your reel is kind of where you're at in your diving experience.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty standard off the bat, you should be starting with your float line.
Okay.
If you don't know the difference, if you're just starting out, if this is your first gun, if you're not comfortable losing your gun, without a doubt, you're going to be using float line. And when we say float line, we're pretty much simply talking from your clip back here, from your tuna clip. All these Rob Allens come standard with them. Tuna clip, float line, buoy.
Yep.
That's it. No breakaway. Everything's kind of rigged up in line. You can connect it to all kinds of different things at the back of your gun. But the basic idea is no matter what happens, you're not going to lose your gun. And because you're not going to lose it, you're not going to take unnecessary risks to save it. And anything happens on the bottom, you get your shaft stuck, you get a fish in the bottom, you shoot something a lot bigger than you were planning on, you just simply let go. And you don't have to worry about it. The reel has a ton of advantages, mainly being how compact the whole system is. I can jump off the boat just with this ready to go. There's nobody that has to deal with my float line, including me.
Right. There's no time wasted trying to get set up for the drift or something like that. Yeah.
It's absolutely the more advanced way to go when you're ready for it.
You're not in the water going like this all day.
All day long.
Or trying to cross your buddy.
You and everybody else are tangled up with your float line, for sure.
Yeah.
And like I said, the more you have in the water, the harder it gets. I mean, you start with 3-4 beginner divers on a boat, and all 3 of you guys have got float lines. It can be tough, but it's absolutely the way to start. I say a year at least using
Before
that float line.
Get to a reel, yeah.
For sure. I did many years, probably 4 or 5 years. Eventually, someone told me I wasn't allowed on their boat anymore if I brought a float line, and I came in here and got my first reel. But yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of those things, as Ryan mentioned, about the float lines, right? And kind of when to choose those versus having a reel. And are there still times where you don't use your reel and choose a float line?
Absolutely. If I'm shooting something really big, if I'm diving really deep, a lot of times I'll switch to float line.
Okay.
And any kind of beginner, any kind of client, a lot of those guys it's so much easier to hand a guy a float line and have him be safe.
Be able to pull the trigger, shoot a fish, and let go of
all of it and swim up. There's no reel to fight, there's no line to tangle. One of the very important things to understand about a reel is once you put a reel on a gun, it's disposable. As soon as that line gets tangled up, which it will happen, coming up from a 60, 80, 90 foot dive, it's done. There's no untangling it. There's no trying, to decide to look at it. First, you have to realize that you're tangled. Then you have to look down. Then you got to figure it out. Then you got to try to untangle it. Then you got to pull out your knife. By this time, it's already way too late. So pretty
You've wasted
standard.
way too much oxygen in that scenario, and you just need to bail.
You need to
right?
bail.
Before all of that thought process
For
happens,
sure.
right?
You need to make that decision before you begin your dive. That if you get tangled up, the gun is gone.
Right.
And not to say it's gone, someone can go back and find it. You could do another drift on the spot, whatever.
Sure.
But
you letting go, getting to the surface, making sure that you're able to dive
Immediately.
again, right?
so if you're not willing to lose your gun, I'd say a reel is not for you yet.
Right. Absolutely. So let's get into the actual process of how, we shot a fish and we do feel like we're advanced enough to use a reel. So there's a bunch of line taken off. Let's go with like a normal to medium sized fish, right? I've seen a lot of guys where they shoot the fish and they pull their line in and they're just kind of coiling it in their hand, right? And they're just kind of bringing all the line and the fish to them.
Well,
In smaller fish, some people might argue, well, why is this a problem?
well, let's go back one step.
Sure.
Let's start from when you've actually shot this fish on the bottom.
Okay.
Now you can do one of two things here. You can let these reels are designed to free spool all the way out by themselves. So you can either let that thing free spool out all the way. You may have your fish down in the wreck. You may have an exorbitant amount of line out for a smaller fish. Or you can palm the reel on the way up. It's going to go out already by itself. So by putting some tension on that reel, you're going to minimize the amount of line that you're going to have to deal with anyways. One of the tricks I do a lot, especially if I'm coming up from deep and I don't have enough time or energy to really put pressure on that fish from the bottom, I don't do it till I'm at the surface. So when I'm 15 feet from the surface, I'm already super buoyant. I'm on my way up anyways. I've got a lot of momentum. I'll lock onto that spool, and now that's going to immediately pull 15 feet back out of 15 feet of line off and get that fish up off the bottom before you start pulling it. And when you do, depending on what reel you have, some of these Rob Allen reels, one of the first things I'll do is I'll take that drag and I'll crank it down. That's when the gun is tight. Gun is still in my hand. Take that drag, I'll crank it down, I'll throw it behind me, and I'll start working my way up the line. And by tightening that drag, you're not worried about more line coming off, which does happen sometimes. Every reel seems to be tuned a little differently, but some of them do that. And so I'll go ahead and crank that thing down, put it behind me, and then work my way up the line, swimming up current and letting that gun go behind me with all the lines.
Right. So what's happening, what Brian's talking about, is essentially instead of what I was talking about, where I've seen guys kind of pull all the line to them, and then essentially you have all of your line kind of wrapped around you, right? With a medium to small size fish, that's not really the end of the world for the fish and you, but where does that become a problem?
It can absolutely become a problem, especially out here in South Florida when something eats it.
Yes.
So we've got Goliath groupers out here. We've got a lot of bull sharks.
Yeah.
And that small fighting fish might turn into a huge problem when a 500-pound bull shark eats it.
Goliath grouper on the
sure.
other end, as opposed to that little snapper that's super easy to pull at the bottom, and no big deal to have line around you, except for when there's a predator around.
For sure.
So that's why using that technique of what Ryan's talking about of climbing the line and swimming into the current, letting the current push everything away from you, right? Then we've got a clip about that to kind of show you what that looks like. Really making sure that if something does come up and take your fish, like a predator, it's not going to tangle you back up. And if they take line away from you, all you do is basically come back and start back over again. Right? So really, really easy to make that happen.
So reels come with their own little bit of rigging specialty. Just like float lines do, you can run float lines, breakaway setups, inline setups like we were talking about. There's a bunch of different ways to set up a reel where you can switch between breakaway float lines and the reel easily. But what I like to do is just stick with a standard reel rigging setup. So just as a quick description, basically on a standard gun with no float line or no reel, you have this little bungee in the front on the muzzle. Your reel is essentially going to replace that bungee. It's going to come up the length of the gun, turn around, and meet the shooting line where that bungee once was. Now, a couple mistakes I usually see with rigging of reels is, number one, people think that you are getting rid of your shooting line. That is not the case. The reel is not going to just spool line off when you shoot. That's not a thing. There's too much friction on the reel. So you still have to run shooting line, whether that's a single or a double wrap of shooting line. If it goes around the line release once or twice, you need to have that slack line come off the gun with the line release system for the reel to work regardless, with or without the reel even. So that's the number one thing. The number one question that I always get about reels is, when I put this on, I can get rid of my shooting line, right? Answer is no. You still need your shooting line.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great point. Some of the other things that I see often is that kind of with that rigging idea is people want to continue to use their bungee in line with their shooting line and their reel. And this isn't necessarily a wrong thing to do, but it's kind of unnecessary. And so what's happening is you're adding an additional piece of equipment that can fail, right? Especially when you go into some bigger fish. Now, you don't really, for one, the bungee isn't doing you any good once you have the reel. You can create tension on your shooting line with the reel itself, but the bungee, you kind of just eliminate altogether, right? You don't need it on there when you're using a reel, and I just don't really see any reason for you to have that on there while you have a reel. Eliminates the bungee completely.
Yeah. My favorite way to do it is actually just tying the reel line straight to my shooting line.
Yeah. Quick release knot.
Yeah.
Quick release
Oh, yeah,
knot.
absolutely.
If you want to learn that knot, shameless plug, XL Podcast has a video of
Awesome.
the 3 knots
Of that
we use
knot?
every time
We'll
we
put
go
a link in the
spearfishing.
description down below for that knot.
Sweet. So I'd say one of the big mistakes I see when using a reel is not being proactive enough on your re-rig. So a lot of our, we do a lot of competition stuff where speed is everything. And the less line you can allow to go out on your way up, and the less tangled you can keep it all, the quicker you're going to be on that reload. So again, on the way up, palm that spool, twist that knob, throw it behind you, and try and keep all that line organized proactively before you have that fish in your hand, and it'll cut down that time to reset up.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that I like to do, not in the competition world, but in like the recreational side, is if I'm diving with my dive buddies and they shoot a fish and they have a reel,
Absolutely.
as long as there's no predators going, in immediate threat, I'll come behind them, grab their gun, and start winding that line up. And what this does is creates, even if they're not doing it perfectly by swimming away from the current, it's taking the line, the slack out of the water. So that if something does take that fish, it's a lot cleaner. But then also, if something does take that fish, I've got my hands on the gun, right? So the diver who is pulling the line doesn't have to worry about what's going on. He's got me as the dive buddy.
It just makes a lot more sense for setting back up again. Again, we come back to that speed. I'm all about speed.
Yeah.
And you're already probably past the spot. You're doing nothing. You're floating there watching your buddy. Might as well help him out with his reel. I wish somebody would do that for me in competition. The competition comes up behind me and starts reeling in for it.
It'd be nice.
Another one of the biggest mistakes I see people use with reels is thinking that you are fighting the fish with the
For
reel.
sure.
That's a great one.
Trying to reel the fish in
Yeah.
like it's a fishing rod. It's
not how it works.
coming out the front.
Yeah.
I see people on the boat with their spear gun like this.
Oh, we've all seen that.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work, right? So as we've talked about many a times, we're going to use that hand-over-hand method to pull the fish to us with that gun out away from us, right?
So bottom line is the reel is not made to function like a fishing reel.
It's to hold the line.
It's to hold the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So awesome. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our video. If you guys did find value in this content, please make sure that you give us a like or share it with your buddies. We do obviously very much so appreciate you, Ryan, coming and talking to us about some reels, and hopefully you guys will see more of Ryan in some of our future videos.
That's right.
Thank you guys so much for watching our video. If you guys did find value in this content, please be sure to smash the like button. And if you guys have any questions on any of the content that you saw in this video or any of our other videos, be sure to leave a comment and we try to answer those as soon as we can. Also, any of the products that you guys did see in this video, you can always check out on our website at flfreedivers.com. See you in the next one.